Have you noticed your aging parent becoming more set in their ways? What looks like stubbornness is actually their brain creating security in an increasingly unfamiliar world. Picture your mom insisting on the same grocery store for decades, or dad refusing to try video calls with grandkids. These moments can be frustrating, but they reveal something important about aging. Today, I'm sharing the 12 behaviors seniors develop that families often misinterpret, from newfound bluntness to resistance to technology. These aren't character flaws, but normal responses to aging, and understanding them can completely transform your relationship with the older adults in your life. Have you ever suggested a simple change to your aging parents' routine only to be met with an unexpected and firm no? What feels like stubbornness might actually be something much more profound happening in their brain. When your father insists on taking the same route to the grocery store, or your mother refuses to try a new medication organizer, they're not being difficult. Their brain is actively seeking safety in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable. There's a biological basis for this preference for routine. As we age, our brains undergo significant neurological changes that affect how we process information. The aging brain processes new data less efficiently than before. Those neural pathways used thousands of times become the brain's preferred routes, like well-worn hiking trails compared to untraveled, overgrown paths. Familiar activities become neurologically easier to process, making change genuinely difficult. This explains why your suggestion to try something new requires their brain to work much harder than sticking with what they know. It's their brain's natural response to aging, not deliberate opposition. Many family members experience a recurring cycle of frustration. You suggest a helpful device, a different way to organize medications, or a change in living arrangements, all with good intentions, only to encounter resistance. This disconnect occurs because what seems like a minor adjustment to you feels like a major disruption to their sense of security and competence. From their perspective, as physical limitations increase and certain mental tasks become more challenging, maintaining control over daily routines becomes crucial. It's one of the few areas where they still feel capable and independent. When pushing too hard for changes, even necessary ones, without acknowledging this deep need for control, you might trigger defensiveness. The relationship becomes strained, trust erodes, and your well-intentioned suggestions get categorized as threats rather than help. The solution isn't abandoning needed changes, but approaching them differently. View their resistance as an attempt to maintain stability in an increasingly unpredictable world, not as opposition to overcome. Try encouraging a more open mindset by suggesting "I'll try" instead of allowing an immediate rejection. This small language shift creates room for exploration without commitment, respecting their need for control. Alternatively, involve family members collaboratively. Having grandchildren teach a new skill creates an opportunity for bonding while introducing necessary changes, transforming a potentially threatening situation into a chance for connection. Remember that the aging brain processes new information differently. This isn't a character flaw, it's biology. By respecting their need for predictability and introducing changes gradually, you help them maintain their dignity while ensuring they receive needed support. The same brain that clings to familiar routines also develops a unique language when expressing deeper emotions. When your aging mom calls to tell you about every ache and pain for the third time this week, it's tempting to tune out or even feel annoyed. But what if those seemingly repetitive complaints aren't just negativity, but actually coded messages that hold much more significant meaning? Behind those frequent calls about minor discomforts often lies a sophisticated form of communication that many family members completely misinterpret. Your aging parent who complains about the neighbor's loud music, the room being too cold, or their dinner lacking flavor, is expressing something deeper that they may not have the words or comfort to communicate directly. This pattern stems from generational differences in emotional expression. Our parents and grandparents typically grew up when openly discussing feelings was discouraged. Men were taught to suppress emotions, while women were expected to maintain pleasantness regardless of their struggles, creating lifetime habits of channeling emotional needs through indirect means. When your father mentions how his doctor rushed through their appointment, he's likely expressing fear about his declining health. When your mother comments on how the caregiver rearranged her kitchen items, she's communicating her sense of losing control and independence. These grievances serve as proxy conversations for weightier concerns they struggle to voice directly. As one caregiver shared, "For months my father complained about his neighbor's dog barking. When I finally sat with him and really listened, he broke down and admitted he was terrified of falling with no one to help him. The dog wasn't the issue, it was fear of being alone." Physical discomfort becomes more prevalent with age, but the constant focus on these issues frequently masks deeper emotional needs. The physical and emotional concerns are deeply intertwined. Chronic pain naturally leads to anxiety, while feelings of isolation can intensify the perception of physical symptoms. This dynamic creates distance in relationships. When we hear constant negativity, we tend to shorten conversations or avoid certain topics. This reaction leaves seniors feeling more isolated and misunderstood, potentially creating a cycle where complaints increase as connection decreases. Breaking this cycle requires hearing what's not being said directly. Instead of dismissing repeated concerns, try asking open-ended questions that explore the feeling behind the complaint. Pay attention to patterns. Does your loved one complain more when tired, when certain topics arise, or after specific events? Balance health-focused conversations with topics that reinforce their full identity. Ask about memories, hobbies, or current events to ensure they feel seen as a whole person. By listening more deeply, you might catch important issues earlier, while strengthening your relationship in the process. While those health concerns often go unspoken, there's another significant challenge that frequently goes unnoticed until it's too late. Over half of people above 75 experience significant hearing loss, transforming once enjoyable gatherings into exhausting experiences where conversation feels like solving a puzzle. When your once social father suddenly declines every invitation, he's likely facing obstacles that have turned social settings from pleasures into challenges he no longer feels equipped to navigate. Social withdrawal among seniors is rarely a personality change or a simple preference for solitude. It typically results from multiple invisible barriers that make social engagement genuinely difficult and sometimes embarrassing. At family gatherings with overlapping conversations, background music, and children playing nearby, someone with hearing loss catches only every third word. Group settings become mental marathons where seniors constantly strain to follow discussions, missing punchlines and important details. The frustration of repeatedly asking people to repeat themselves and seeing subtle signs of others' impatience leads many seniors to avoid these situations. Declining invitations becomes easier than enduring the exhaustion and embarrassment of pretending to follow conversations. When discussions center primarily around health problems, as research indicates many do, it creates a double barrier: difficulty hearing combined with topics that unintentionally alienate. Mobility challenges introduce another layer of complexity. Driving to events, navigating stairs, and standing for extended periods become significant obstacles. Transportation difficulties severely limit social participation. Without the ability to drive, attending any event requires coordinating rides, feeling dependent on others, and restricting schedules to accommodate helpers. Many seniors unknowingly fall into patterns that make aging lonelier, with limited mobility being a prime example. Environmental barriers compound these challenges. Venue accessibility, comfortable seating, distance from parking, and bathroom accessibility. When preparation and logistics become more taxing than the pleasure of the event itself, staying home starts to seem rational. The emotional toll of outliving one's social circle creates perhaps the most profound barrier. As friends pass away, move to care facilities, or become homebound, seniors often feel like strangers at events where they once knew everyone. When your father says, "I just don't feel up to the party," he might really mean, "I don't know who'll be there anymore, and I'm tired of being the odd one out." Cognitive changes further complicate social participation. Following conversations require significant mental energy and processing speed, both naturally declining with age. Anxiety about forgetting names or losing track of conversations makes social interactions stressful rather than rewarding. Instead of simply encouraging seniors to get out more, consider creating quality social experiences accommodating their changing needs. Successful senior programs incorporate transportation services, ensure accessible venues, and create environments where hearing and participating are easier. These programs effectively promote social connectedness by addressing the actual barriers seniors face. Beyond social environments, there's another world where seniors increasingly feel isolated: the digital one. Have you noticed how your aging parent who successfully managed complex workplace systems for decades now struggles with a simple smartphone? This disconnect isn't about intelligence or willingness to learn. It reveals a fascinating truth about how our brains and bodies change as we age, especially when confronting technologies that didn't exist during our formative years. Consider Julie, who commanded sophisticated computer systems as a school administrator for 40 years. Now, at 78, this once tech-savvy professional repeatedly asks her grandchildren basic questions about sending photos on her phone. Her journey from workplace technology expert to digital novice illustrates the profound shift many seniors experience, like a pilot who flew complex aircraft now struggling to operate a modern car's dashboard. The aging brain processes unfamiliar digital interfaces differently. While someone in their 20s intuitively navigates a new app after quick exploration, seniors require more time and repetition to form those neural pathways. What appears as confusion is actually the brain working harder to integrate unfamiliar concepts into existing knowledge frameworks. Physical changes create significant hurdles. Tapping precise spots becomes challenging when fingers don't move as nimbly as before. Arthritis and subtle tremors transform small touch targets into frustrating obstacles. Age-related vision changes make reading text on glossy screens difficult. Features designed with younger users in mind become inadvertent barriers for aging hands and eyes. The emotional dimension compounds these challenges. Many seniors experience genuine anxiety about technological mistakes. Harold, at 82, initially avoided video calling his grandchildren, fearing accidental purchases or scams. This anxiety creates a cycle where fear prevents practice, which further reinforces difficulty. The constantly shifting technological landscape presents another challenge. Mastering one interface only to have updates change everything overnight creates unique frustration that younger users, accustomed to digital evolution, rarely experience with the same intensity. Understanding these multiple barriers transforms how we approach technology education for seniors. Effective programs provide clear, written instructions rather than relying solely on demonstrations. They feature simplified interfaces with larger text and fewer options. Most importantly, they emphasize meaningful benefits that make the learning curve worthwhile, like connecting with family through video calls. These approaches succeed because they address actual barriers instead of assuming reluctance stems from stubbornness. Patient instruction accommodating both cognitive and physical needs makes tremendous difference. When Harold finally tried video calling with step-by-step written instructions and a simplified interface, he discovered joy that outweighed his initial anxiety. The connection with his family transformed his relationship with technology, proving that with the right support, digital barriers can become bridges to meaningful connection. Connection with family brought joy to Harold despite his technology struggles. But there's an even more profound disconnect that goes beyond digital skills. Have you noticed how conversations with aging parents often include critiques about the way things are now? Those seemingly judgmental comments about younger generations aren't simply stubbornness. They're symptoms of a deeper emotional struggle many seniors experience but rarely articulate. When your father sighs and says, "Kids these days have no respect," he's experiencing what psychologists recognize as a form of cultural displacement. Think about it. Your father grew up in a world where communication happened face-to-face or through handwritten letters. Social norms were different. Expectations about how people interact were clearer to him. Now he finds himself in a world where relationships form through screens, where informality has replaced many traditional courtesies he values. "I spent 70 years learning how to be a good person in this world," my neighbor Ruth told me, her voice cracking slightly. "Now I feel like none of that matters anymore." This sentiment reveals how seniors often feel like foreigners in their own country. The social landscape has transformed so dramatically that the wisdom they spent decades accumulating can seem irrelevant. Imagine studying for an exam only to discover the questions are in a language you don't speak. These judgmental comments about younger generations frequently mask grief over feeling increasingly marginalized in a society that seems to value youth, technological fluency, and constant change over experience and tradition. The acceleration of change in recent decades has been unprecedented, from fundamental shifts in family structures to revolutions in how we communicate and form communities. For many seniors, modern technology represents confusing social territories with unwritten rules they never learned. Family gatherings where younger relatives remain glued to their phones intensify feelings of invisibility and irrelevance, like being physically present but socially excluded. Their criticisms come from a place of loss, not mere disapproval. Understanding these dynamics creates opportunities for meaningful connection. Instead of dismissing your aging parents' perspectives as outdated, recognize the underlying emotional need, the desire to feel that their life experience still has value and relevance. Bridging these generational divides benefits everyone involved. Try asking questions that invite them to connect their experiences to current circumstances. Dad, you mentioned that people communicated differently when you were young. How do you think that compares to how we use social media today? This approach acknowledges their perspective while creating space for meaningful exchange. When seniors share stories from their past, help them connect those narratives to something current. Actively involving them in new experiences while valuing their input can help them feel more connected to the present without abandoning their past. Remember that beneath judgmental comments often lies a person struggling to find their place in a rapidly changing world. We've spent this time looking at behaviors that might frustrate or confuse you, but here's what I hope you take away. These aren't signs of your loved one becoming difficult. They're human responses to profound changes they're experiencing every day. When you look past the surface behaviors, you'll discover what they truly need: security, dignity, meaningful connections, and purpose. Each action speaks to a deeper human need. The most precious gift is seeing the person behind the behavior. Remember, like a lighthouse guiding ships through storms, your understanding illuminates their darkest moments. Take a moment today to reflect. How might one interaction change with this perspective?